Okay, it's about maybe 3 minutes after 7 o'clock p.m. Tuesday, January the 4th, 2022. 2022. No matter how you write the last two numbers, first two or second two is still going to be the same. That's what I said the other night in church. So, but anyway, that's the way it is. So, welcome to 2022. And as I said earlier, it's good to see uh, some of my former students in this class. I usually do meet my former students in this class because this is contemporary issues in criminal justice. It's a survey course. I like it. It's basically almost like an independent studies, and I will be working with you. But most of you already know how I work. So the earlier part of this class, I'll be zipping through it pretty fast to uh, get to. So it says hour and a half, but it may not go an hour and a half in this class. So what I usually like to do is start out classes. That's what I have started doing, is letting the students um, introduce themselves. And so I'm going to go ahead and get that going here. So what I'm going to need to do here is unmute everybody. And I did. Let's see, your mic should be unmuted. Unmute everyone. Unmute. Okay. You should each be able to respond back. Let's see, I see, it looks like Jennifer's mic is still muted. I don't know why.
Because my TV's too loud.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. Don't worry about it. Um, I have my TV on, but you can't hear it. So who was that? That was Jennifer first? Was that Jennifer was talking about the television? Or was that Maisie?
Can you hear me?
Uh, okay. I hear Maisie. Is this Maisie?
Yes.
So how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just trying to get my cats contained into one room.
We don't have cats here. We just have dogs here. But my wife's not a cat person. It's funny. She doesn't like cats, but she has all kind of leopard shoes, purses, and all kind of stuff like that. But I call her cat lady anyway. Uh, so anyway, well, Maisie, it's good to see you. You've been in my classes before, right?
Yeah, I think this is like my fourth or fifth one.
That's what I said, and so too has Jennifer. So welcome to um, Professor Richard Wright's classes again. Um, I already um, I don't have to say how I operate to you guys because you already know. Um, so so how was your holiday?
I worked a lot. We have COVID in my facility again, so I pretty much was at work every day since Christmas Eve.
You know, COVID's kind of all over the place. I try to remind people. I say that people got relaxed. I said this, and then when they heard this Omicron coming, they says it's not as serious, but now they found out is that it's extremely, exceptionally contagious. I mean, and if you and as I tell people, um, I encourage people to get the shots. I got every shot I can find. So
Our clinical coordinator on my facility is um anti-masker and doesn't want anybody to get the shots. So it's kind of crazy. She's a RN.
That's you know what? If I had a person who told me that they were RN and they weren't getting the shots, I says, well, if I'm ever in the hospital, I don't want you to be my nurse. Uh, that's for
Absolutely.
sure. It's crazy. People want to politicize. How come they didn't?
Exactly.
How did come they didn't politicize the flu shot?
That's
You
what
know,
I'm saying. Of like you guys like you're especially nurses, like you guys are supposed to back science,
that's
and
that's 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 crazy. I mean, that's ridiculous. And then I told someone I've been taking shots ever since the first shot I ever took in my life, and I'm 71, was the polio shot. And you all may have never heard of that one, but it was um, it was the first shot I ever had to take. And then after that, I got tetanus, I got measles, mumps, chicken pox shot. I got you name them. I got all kinds of shots and been getting shot ever since I've been around. But I tell people, remember your body needs antibodies, so they can fight off uh, these viruses and germs that are around you. So yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So that's a scary thing.
This is our like sixth outbreak.
Yeah, well, you know what? As somebody said, if you eat off of the floor, expect to get germs in your body.
Yeah.
Put it like that. So, well, you're doing okay though, right?
Yeah, no, I'm staying healthy. Um,
Good.
I had COVID last December and I haven't had it since.
Oh, wow. I'm fortunate enough to not have had it. Uh, and like I said again, even now you can still get it after you get all the shots. But the thing is that you will survive. I've lost 3 people in the family in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, and none of them they wanted to get the shot. Matter of fact, they got mad at me when I talked about it. Well, now they're not able to get mad at me anymore because they're not here anymore. And one's older than me by a year or so, and the others are younger. And it's just one thing I like about this school is that they're on it. And I think everybody in the nursing programs all understand that here. You can't even, I don't think they'll let you go to the school here if you haven't gotten it. Um, and One of the very health conscious places. I like Rasmussen. I've been here 10 years. So I kind of like the place. And I've formed a lot of relationships with students, former students, and I'm very fortunate. So
Definitely,
anyway, huh?
definitely a good place. I felt
Yeah,
very welcomed and
yeah. Well, if you don't feel welcome in any other classes, I always make sure my students feel welcomed in this class. And I'm not the easiest professor in terms of grading, but there's a reason for that. Is because I point in the direction of excellence. You already know that. So, well, anyway, Maisie, I'm glad to hear from you. So, what do you expect to get from this class?
what do I?
I know you want an A, but I mean, I mean, what do you expect?
I just want to absorb all the information I can and retain it.
Sounds like a plan there. Yeah, yeah, I hear you on that one. I
I'm
remind you guys. Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I'm looking at so I'll be graduated in March, so I was gonna apply for an investigator job with the Board of Defense.
Okay.
So I just kind of want to absorb as much as I can.
Oh, I'll be able to help you. So, well, okay. Well, let's hear from Jennifer. Jennifer, you there? You unmute your mic? Let me unmute you. Unmute.
All right. Can you hear me?
Now I can. Were you on?
Okay.
Were you muted? I think. Yeah.
You were, yeah, I was locked out. Um, yeah, so I look forward to seeing if I'm able to apply all the knowledge I've learned over the past 2 years effectively and efficiently after being in all of your classes and everybody else's. I was able to succeed to get to this point to graduate at the end of February. So super excited for that.
Well, that's good. That's
I
good.
know. The
Yeah.
fantastic thing is I've been able to apply all of this in my job at the sheriff's department as I've gone along, and has made a difference in our department as well.
That's good. I'm happy to hear that. Wow. Take a little bit of Professor Wright with you in your career, and I think you could be okay.
I do, you know what I do, and I share your life story every time I start your class up back up. I share. I'm like, you got to watch this professor's story in his life, and you got to understand where he comes from and how he encourages all of us students to get to where we are. And um, if we have you right off the bat, we're lucky because that just guarantees our success in our college career all the way down the line in every single class with every other professor.
Well, I feel good about that. A lot of my colleagues also have listened to my story, and I just try to tell them. I says, I have I don't throw stuff out just to make it sound good. Like adversity is the springboard to success is not just something I'm throwing out. No, I share with you the meat and what it's all about and through my life. And I one of my students that I have in Introduction to Corrections, which you both are both familiar with, um, that um, she posted on Facebook and shared it on Facebook now. So it's people who are my friends will be able to see it out there uh, as well. I thought I had done that a long time ago. I probably did, uh, but so it's. I'm a person who I was put on this earth to encourage. That's my role, and that's what I try to do, whether I'm pastoring or whether I'm teaching, either whether I'm parenting, uh, or even talking to my dog. I got a golden doodle. You know what a golden doodle is?
Yeah, they're cute.
Yeah, he's a biggie. He's Milky Way. He's pretty big. He weighs about 60 something pounds, but he's only a baby. He's a year and 4 months. Let's see, he was born in 22nd of June of last year. So yeah, so he's a year and a half, something like that. Yeah, he's a year and a half now. But Um, so I just try to enjoy life, and I try to make sure that my students understand that I'm aware of things that happen in people's lives, and just let me know. If I know I can work with you. I remember I had one student, and this student always said to me when they reach out to me, because you guys know my rule. You can email me, text me, or either call me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. Well, this student used to reach out to me late because she worked late, and she would apologize every time she do it. I said, "Will you just stop doing that?" You know, I says, "I'm okay. I'm okay." Yeah, but I feel like I'm a pest. I says, "Well, you're only going to be a pest for 5.5 weeks." And she started laughing. But then she came back to another classmate. She says the pest is back. But so we know each other from that. But it's okay. It's all right. I'm here to be of service, and I have rested from being out there on the field, and so now I'm planting seeds. hopefully of wisdom and knowledge to enhance the future, and also to do something about the unethical practices that I see around criminal justice taking place. And I produce educated, ethical, and professional students. That's my role, and uh, that's what we're going to do. So, all right. Anything else, Jennifer? I think she muted herself again. So, well, I'm going to mute everybody now. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Let's go ahead. Let me mute on entry. So everybody should be muted except me. Okay. Let me make sure no, I don't want to hear that thing. Okay, and I don't want anybody to take control. All right, so let's get right into our video of our class here. And let me share that. Okay, so you guys are all familiar with this screen and messages. This is where I get messages. You can send messages, you can click on that, and I might have one student that sent me a message there, somebody named Tiffany, and I've responded to that. And then, of course, the grade book, I won't click on that one. Then there's discussions. We'll come back to that. But I'd like to start with the calendar to remind everybody once again. I can go real quick with you guys. As you know, course began yesterday. Your initial post is due tonight. Your lecture open house is tonight, roughly till 8:30 or maybe before. Your discussion reply post is due Saturday. And then your written assignment will be due on Sunday along with the key phrase, but both of you are here, so you'll be able to get that already. And you'll notice that your lectures are all, now I'm going to show you a little trick here. Every Monday until we get to February. Let me show you. Okay, so when we get to the February 1st lecture, the course will end on the 8th. So that's week 5 lecture. I mean, it doesn't make sense to give a lecture on the last day of class. So therefore, you're going to have to deal with 2 lectures from me that week, Thursday and Tuesday. Those are the dates that we have. Originally, I changed it to Wednesday and Tuesday and Wednesday, but the reason why I left to Thursday is because they canceled the graduation um, because of COVID. They're still doing online graduations. I can't wait to get back to um, going back to the live graduations. And then, of course, the course ends on the 8th. There's absolutely that. Everybody knows if you get past 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, you're in the 9th, which means the grades don't count no matter how good the assignments are. But that's something that I will say every week. And so there's your schedule laid out for you. And then let's go back to, okay. So now let's take a look at the, let's see what I like to do first. Okay, let's do this one. We can whiz through this, the syllabus, and it gives my office hours. You can text me, call me, or email me any hour of the day. I got to change. Boy, I don't know what I've been doing here. I've been goofing stuff up like that. Let me do something with this. Give me a minute. You'll see this live as I do this. I was putting this together, so syllabus editor. This is how you can text me, call me, or email me any hour of the day except 25th hour. Okay. So now I got it saved. Okay. So now I go back. Now you see how I'll let you in on my little secret there, how I did that. So now we go back there and it should be corrected. Yep. So except the 25th hour. And as you already know, my preference is calls and texting for urgent matters. And it's important that I know because emails is the slowest method. And please, whatever you do when you get to near the end of the course, decrease your emails and more text and calls, because of the fact that this little phone right here has my phone number on it. That's not a Google phone number. Some professors do that. I don't do that. I use this number for a lot of different things. And so it's important that you be aware that you can text me. I don't have any charges for text or anything like that, as most people don't now. So one other thing about this course that you will discover right off the bat is you can't find the textbook. That's because there is not one. And so therefore, you don't have to worry about citing the textbook or getting PowerPoints, because there is no textbook for this course. As I said earlier, this is more of a survey course, and you'll discover, and you're going to really discover that it's really kind of like refreshing your memory on some of the things that you've learned throughout being in other classes, many of which I have taught, and we'll be discussing those issues. And so then we can go down here, written assignments, if you see that there. So you have written assignments. There is not a quiz or a test in this course. So it's based on writing. And the reason why it's that way is because, as I said, it's like an independent studies course. And the professor is there to help you, guide you along the way. And then we meet for the live lectures to kind of discuss the issues in the module and bounce off maybe some of the things that I can do to make the material come more live to you. Your discussion posts, you're already familiar with that, how they work. Your live classroom lectures. So you want to get 415 points. And you already know that I operate with the AB group. I'm the honor roll dean's list people. If you want to get a C, don't ask me how to get it. I won't answer it for you, because I don't want to put people in that zone. I like to try to get people out of their comfort zone. I have learned many times that professors have put me in uncomfortable positions, but guess what? I didn't complain. I just did what I needed to do, and voila, I ended up with a very, how should I say, exciting career as a defense attorney, a little prosecution work in there, police work, investigator work, paralegal, all of that stuff. So I wore every hat that we have here. I've worked with probation officers, parole officers, correction officers, and the whole lot. So I'm well versed in that stuff. So these are the people who get the jobs. I've never been turned down for a job. I've turned down some jobs, and that's a good thing. And then accommodations, you know about that. Transferable skills, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them, but you should be aware that there are 6, and you are, that at this particular point, you should really be proficient in critical thinking in your writing. in this particular course. And we deal with ethics, diversity, teamwork, professional responsibility, and information literacy. And remember, there is one source of information literacy that is a no-no. Anybody remember what that is? You can type that in the chat box. I'll see it. Remember what it is? If you use that, you get red flagged. What source is that? Yep, there it is. Wikipedia. And the reason is because it's a word base, which means anybody can change it. So yeah, it's not good for, you know, I use it for entertainment and stuff like that. And I might glance at something there, but I try to, if I'm going to use it as a source of represent a paper, I'm going to be in trouble. So I'm not doing that. So I don't want you to do it either. A lot of professors uh, don't feel that way about it, but I do. I guess I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I am one who um, it was expected of me to produce um, high level work. So I have that in me, and it comes out of me to all of my students. And um, apparently you guys must really get it because you came back for some more. So somebody glutton for punishment, but not, no, want some more knowledge. That's what I want to try to work on. Attendance policy, we're not going to get into that. You'll know about that. You already know my late assignment thing is that of course, is not mine, it's the school's, but it is 10% grade loss for each day that you are late with your assignments. You could have a perfect paper on Sunday and submit that same paper on Monday, and you got a 90. Tuesday, you got an 80. Wednesday, you got a 70, and you know what I mean. So by the time Thursday comes, you're heading toward failure, and Friday, you definitely have failed. Now, of course, you know that I can waive the late penalty, as it says here. Instructors may waive the late penalty in the case of extenuating circumstances. All of you in this class should know by now what I do for extenuating circumstances. I do it on a case by case basis, but it takes me back to what I was saying earlier. I got to know about it. I'm not going to assume that there are problems. People have problems. Let me know. I'm transparent. You need to be transparent with me, and I don't put your business out in the classroom or anything like that. But the point of the matter is I need to know because I can always help you always, not sometimes. So it's not the dean, it's not the advisors, it's not the president of the university, the chairman of the board who determines what late penalties are. I do that. I mean, they do determine late penalties. I shouldn't say that. The extenuating circumstances are. Okay. And then down here, the academic integrity policy, you guys are well aware of that. So that's the total of that. Over here, we also have a very good library resource that you guys should all be familiar with, and it helps you to do everything from Grammarly. As you already know, I run all your papers through Grammarly. You also know APA is the dominant system that we use, and the reason why we use it is because for academic integrity. And then we have tutorials that help you, you name it. You can click on any of these things for tutoring, and you can get information that you need to help you. Some of my students in this class are tutors. I don't remember whether I have any this term, but I have in the past had students who were ambassadors and tutors and things of that nature. So anyway, that is where you can find that information there. And then there's a little tab for tutoring as well. Some of these things you don't see. Like, for example, you don't see that this right here. Anything that's like this, that's not color, you don't see it. This is for faculty and so forth. So I don't ever use this one, but I use this one as you already saw. Okay. I think we're at the point now where I can get into announcements, which we go pretty fast. You already are familiar with the writing process, but you can click on that again, refreshing your memory, and there it is right there. This is what we were talking about. Adversity is the springboard to success. That's the YouTube video. And of course, you know, as you click on that, and as I said, feel free to share it. It's not just for class, and it's always funny to me that whenever I look at the starting of my recordings, I always either got my eyes closed or either, that's a blink actually, or either my mouth open. And then when I click it, I get that thing out of there. It actually has me starting to talk. So, see, and so it's about an hour and some minutes, so we're not going to go over it. So that's the adversity springboard success. Again, it's something I encourage um, sharing. And you should be aware, by the way, that is not my full story. That's almost like a thumbnail sketch of it. And I've had a few people who were family members who were disturbed when they saw it. I said, well, I just told the truth. That's all. Okay. Like some of my siblings didn't like the way that I told about what happened with my mom and my dad and the situation there about what happened. I said, truth is something that I operate on, and you know, that's what we live with. APA assistance, as you already know, you're pros at that. And then, you know, if you click on that, then you got this right here. Okay. All this will be available to you throughout the course. Then your welcome announcement, which you are all too familiar with. The only thing in here is I tell you to make sure you follow each of these highlighted points, and then this paragraph here, which tells you information such as when the lectures are taking place, like right now, for an hour and a half roughly, and then starting next Tuesday, lectures will take place every Tuesday. Beginning, that's the 11th. And then week 6 lecture, I already told you, will take place on the 3rd, 7 to 8 p.m. For week 6 lecture, because the course ends that following Tuesday after week 5's lecture. And then, so that'll be available to you the whole time. And then our week 1 lecture is all about the historical foundations of criminal justice. And we have these topics we're going to discuss briefly: different goals of criminal justice, sources of law, the 3 components of criminal justice, and of course, this again tells you when the lectures are, gives the link there, which you already know because you're here. The discussion assignment will be due tonight initially, and then reply Saturday. And then your written assignment on the 4th and 5th Amendment. I spent a lot of time dealing with this topic in constitutional law, which I'm excited about. I just completed teaching it, and I will be teaching it again, and we go in more detail, but we kind of like scratch the surface here on the 4th and 5th Amendment, which we'll talk about. And then this again gives more information. And then there's my adversity springboard to success. I encourage you to start strong and finish strong. So those are the announcements. that we have. Let's get into this week. So let's talk about the assignment first. Here we go. Okay, here's a scenario that are given. And you read this scenario, and then you're going to explain the crime control and due process models, as well as the Fourth, Fifth Amendments that provide rights to offenders during questioning. We'll again elaborate on that during the lecture tonight. The timeline for American criminal justice, and doing some research on 2 additional articles. So to illustrate the steps you would take as an arresting officer to ensure you did not violate the suspect's rights. And it's going to be for roughly 750 to 1,000 words in length. Remember, it's APA in-text citations and reference page with a cover page, and you know about that. Okay, slow me down if you need, but I think you guys kind of get it. So you know already that I ignore this column. I don't want you in this column. That's failing. This is just making it. This is leaving B, maybe B minus. I want you to be in mastery, which is actually AB, and that's the way that I teach, and that's the way that I want you to perform. Student said in the student reviews that they do at the end that I graded my students like they are professionals, and the dean said, yeah, I'm glad to hear them say that, even though that was a criticism from the student. But that's just the way it needs to be, you know. How do? You practice this stuff in school so that when you get out there in the real world, you'll have things that'll help you to be a professional. And that's where you learn in school. So Professor Wright that's my mantra. That's who I am. And that's who I'll always be. I will never apologize for being tough on those kinds of things. So the criteria: crime control and due process, clear and comprehensive explanation of the crime control and due process, and dealing with the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. I'll help you with that. And then steps that you should take. When it says clear and comprehensive, it really is talking about providing details that someone can pick up and read your paper that don't know anything about the topic that you're writing about, so that they'll be able to understand it and maybe ask questions. And then, of course, you know, the sources that you cite in your papers, the APA requirements, as if you when you look at this, you don't necessarily see it all the way down, but it's not part of the rubric, but it's already part of the standard that you already know. All written assignments are APA. So the Fourth or Fifth Amendment will be the topic of this paper that you're going to write. Double spaced again. Okay. I don't think you can hear him. If you hear a dog, tell me. I don't. They tell me that you can't hear it, but I can hear him. He's up above me. He's a big mouth dog. Okay. Any questions about the assignment? Okay. Anything, Maisie? No? Okay, look, apparently not. Discussion. Rights. Rights. The essence of law. Rights. I had a radio show I used to do called Know Your Rights. A bit of a spell with a W. but it was a play on words, and that's what I talked about, rights. So you're going to use this scenario, and then you're going to follow these points. If you were a defense attorney, what arguments would you make to have the confession excluded from evidence based on what you read? If you were the judge, would you permit the confession? And you're going to elaborate on that in your initial post, and then respond to a different post from your classmates. Okay, I see a few of them already, and I've already responded to at least one. Okay, and then of course your live classroom recording. This is where you find the link, but you don't need this because you're here already. This will be changed after this to YouTube, where you can find the recording. All right. Then, of course, your live classroom phrases due Sunday, and 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. And then you can get yours in tonight, you guys who are here. So we're going to talk about these three sections here tonight. Okay, so let's now delve into the meat and potatoes of this. So it talks about the FBI and all the things of technology and professionalism that go with police work. We going back to really the 80s and 90s, where the agencies, it was different. We didn't have the technology that we had, but we went through eras of uh, things happening that almost are things that are happening now. We have a lot of social disorder. We have riots and unrest. That's even taking place now. The rising crime rate, and part of that has to do with, you guys remembering drugs and crime. Um, um, Drugs, excuse me, and crime course at J280 that I talked about constantly throughout the whole course, that much of our crime is caused by drugs. Individuals commit crimes to support their drug habits, and that if we were to get that under control, it would take a big portion of our crime, and our crime rates would drop tremendously. Somebody said that they don't want that to happen because then people have to find new careers. Well, no, I think the key thing is that it would be better for public safety, as far as I'm concerned, because that's part of what crime control is all about. And you know how the police cars, there were the beat officers, and people knew the officers in their community, and but now it's a little different. So then going back to the um, due process era, as we call it, the 60s and 70s, women's rights, civil rights movements took place where the laws were changed. Civil Rights Act of 64, 68, and others coming along, voting rights and so forth, which are now under attack again. And so police play an important role, or law enforcement, to deal with issues. And as you already know, that professionalism is what is being uh, demanded of police officers. And then when you perform in an unprofessional manner, there are consequences, such as in the Kim Potter case, where an accidental shooting with a taser resulted in a criminal case, because you're held to such a high standard. And that training is so important for you to utilize in terms of executing uh, your work. And then, of course, the egregious um, things that took place in some of these cases, like, for example, the Derek Chauvin case, which some of you may or may not know that you already know he was found guilty in the state case, but some of you may not know that he also now have pled guilty um, because he saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and it was a train from the federal case that was coming, and pled guilty to that as well. But the point, man, is you end up behind bars, and the place where you're trying to send people who are bad people, and you end up right there with them. And so we talk about now that law enforcement is working together more with social service agencies dealing with drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, and homelessness. As you recall, once again, from the J250 that we talked about, um, the techniques of diversion, where individuals who have drug problems could walk into a police office and not be arrested for having drugs on them, but instead sent to a social service agency to help them to deal with the issues. And you know that how I feel in terms of corrections, rehabilitation is the essence, because of the fact that if we don't deal with the rehabilitation aspects of corrections, we will have recidivism, where people will repeat and continue to go around in that cycle. And if you remember, my goal in terms of dealing with people with drug the issues and alcohol is getting them from 12 to 6. Do you guys remember the 12 to 6 discussion? Do you remember that? Yeah. That's my own thing, and I had a student to cite that in a paper, and I said thank you. Okay, but yeah, where the key thing is go a 180. You know, I hear people just out of habit. Oh, let's do a 360. I said, do you know what you just said? This is you end up right back where you were. But no, the 180 is a new direction in life, and that's the way I explain that it'd be beneficial in terms of helping individuals. And police are trained more now into dealing with mental illness, especially because, as you will discover very quickly, that there's I call it a deadly mix, drug and alcohol abuse and mental illness. And as people who are into the medical aspects of it, such as nurses, EMTs, medical assistants, and so forth, understand that a person is sick. Well, I is my contention and position that anyone who commits a crime is sick, and oftentimes being redundant again, it's because of a drug or alcohol problem or a mental illness issue that we need to address. Um, okay, so we look at the various eras and how things have changed. Um, the key thing, and you know, we're talking about due process going from the 20s, where we saw the rise of gangs, and I was a lawyer for many gang members, and I understand a lot of things about gangs, um, which led to Hoover forming the FBI. I always laugh whenever I hear Hoover and the FBI. For those of you who may or may not remember, I have shared my goal as a kid was to be a member of the FBI so I can help get my law degree. And I applied to the FBI in the 60s when I was in high school, and was summarily rejected, and would find out years later that the reason why I was rejected was solely based on my race. Hoover was summarily rejecting minorities and women from the FBI. And I got a letter from them when I was in law school, asking me to apply again. I said, nope, I'm done with that. But I have many individuals who are um, involved with the FBI. It's very diverse now, and I have many friends and colleagues who are FBI agents or former FBI agents. Okay, so anyway, crime rates um, demand professionalism from police. That's all I'm gonna say in terms of this section here. And then we get down here, and once again, due process. Due process is the key thing. The little historical thing for you to just be aware of is that understanding how the system works, dealing with the rights of individuals and the Constitution. And we spend a lot of time doing that in each of these classes. And so if you're going to work in criminal justice, you're going to, particularly in law enforcement, these are the steps that generally take place. Arrest, you arrest, then you're booked, that fingerprinted process, picture taken and all that stuff. You have within 72 hours your appearance in court, generally is for bond and things of that nature. And then from that point, you're arraigned, where the question is you plead guilty or not guilty. Those are the only two things that you do at arraignments. If anybody saw the movie My Cousin Vinny, one of my favorite movies that I referred to, uh, um, Mr. Gambino, Joe Pesci was playing the role of the attorney, and he was at the arraignment before the judge, who was Fred Gwynn, and he uh, started trying to explain his case, and the judge says, counselor, you're either going to say guilty or not guilty. That's all we're going to do today. And so if you plead guilty, well, then you go right to the deal for pleading. But most people don't. They go to listen to the formal charges and then through what we call discovery, or as some jurisdictions call it disclosure, where you have an opportunity to learn about the cases that are filed against you. You learn the evidence that the prosecution has to substantiate the charges. And then um, early resolution, it says, is offered early in the case. That's after you get through discovery, excuse me, and you had a chance to evaluate the case. However, though, there generally is a couple other steps. The going right to the motion to suppress. The motion to suppress is where you file motions, defense, to try to get evidence taken out where there may have been violations of the Fourth Amendment, which we'll talk about in a minute, the Fifth Amendment, maybe not even necessarily the Sixth Amendment, but more the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment. Those are the big ones, especially the Fourth Amendment search and seizure issue. There's also motions to determine the fitness to stand trial and things of that. And then you go into pretrial hearings, which can last a while, and then maybe a plea deal. As you know, that about 90% of the cases stop right there. They don't even go to trial. And the 10% that go to trial are the ones that you read about in terms of appeals generally. Depositions, sometimes not necessarily in criminal cases so much. And then the trial, and then if you're found guilty, then the sentencing. And that's just the criminal process and how it works there. Okay. Any questions about anything in this section? Okay. All right. It's pretty straightforward. So now we get to the sources of law. So as you know, your Constitution of the United States is really the backbone. And that's where rights started out as. So let's move that over there. So your Constitution, which consists of your first 10 amendments, are what we call the Bill of Rights. And you should be aware of the fact that in the Constitution and criminal justice, we primarily use the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment. Those are the four. But probably not, most of our focus is on the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment, with the Sixth Amendment being part and parcel of the rights and the speedy trial and stuff like that. Again, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So each state has a constitution, but the United States Constitution is what controls. The courts interpret the laws, and the executive branch, excuse me, enforce the laws, and the legislative branch pass the laws. So you have Congress, and then states have their houses and senates as well. And all our criminal laws are what we call codified, from the Constitution to the state codes. Each state has what we call statutes or codes of conduct that are used in criminal law in the various jurisdictions. The federal um, um, jurisdiction operates under what we call the United States Code, uh, Chapter 18. That's where most of the federal laws that are criminal involved there. So the executive branch is usually considered as the mayor, as I say here. Law enforcement is the one that actually executes the individual's um, rights and things like that. Finally, as I said, the judicial branch will then come in and decide the cases. And you already know that the highest court of the land is the United States Supreme Court, which at the present time consists of 9 members, and very interesting body of existence. We study it very carefully. All right, so we deal with due process, and you can see already that in this little section here where it says dealing with the rights of individuals such as Miranda. You already know Arizona versus Miranda, that is a case that I have some personal information from a professor whose techniques were used to reach the infamous Miranda rights because the Supreme Court decided that they were violations of the Fifth Amendment. That is interrogation and confessions of individuals. And so individuals should have their rights protected under due process so that you can have a chance to be treated fairly, so that you will have a chance to get the evidence that's against you, so that you'll be able to cross-examine the witnesses for the prosecution. So as it says here, if an officer obtains a confession without reading the Miranda rights, or the individual waiving their rights, then it may not be admissible. And that's where we get back to that motion to suppress, where we can throw out a statement. Now, back to Miranda, you know, the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have a right to an attorney. Do you understand these rights? And then if you can't afford one, then they'll appoint one. When do we, this is a refresher for you, when do we utilize the Miranda rights? At what point? Anybody remember? Under detainment. Okay. The word I want you to use, and you know it already, is in custody. 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 because you can be detained, excuse me, under the stop and frisk. You can, but that's a brief. So in custody. And how do you know? Oh, is it necessary to tell a person that they're under arrest for them to be in custody? Nope. The answer is no. Refresh your memory that the way that you know is when a person is not free to go. And you don't have to use the words you're under arrest. It is not necessary. It is something that you need to always remember. It's based on the circumstances, situations. For example, if I'm surrounded by police officers and you're talking to me, chances are I'm under arrest because I'm circled so that I can't go. Very simple question that I tell people is if you ask the question, am I free to go? And the answer is no, then you're under arrest. And any questioning at that time, you should give the Miranda rights. But now you don't have to say you're under arrest. It is not necessary. Um, and so if an officer obtains a confession without reading the rights, the confession is not admissible. More specifically, dealing with the Fifth Amendment. Back to that again, tying it right to Miranda. That's where it came from, the right against self-incrimination. As you may know, that in criminal cases, the defendant does not have to testify in a criminal case. And it is an error for the defense to bring up that the person um, is not testifying or why they're not testifying or even ask them that. That kind of happened in one of the cases. I think it was the Chauvin case where I think the attorney asked, or it might have been in that case. No, it was the Ahmaud Arbery case, the one down in Georgia, where the three guys were found guilty of shooting and killing Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging at that particular time. So you can't do that. That's a right that you don't have to give up. And the Fourth Amendment is unreasonable search and seizures, which generally says that if you do a search or a seizure of someone, you have to have a warrant unless it fits into one of the exceptions, which I won't go into, but that's the key thing. And so most of our work that is so important for law enforcement to understand is how not to violate the Fourth Amendment rights first. And that if you violate them, you're going to have your case tossed out and it's going to be what we call an unreasonable search and seizure. So um, the one of the exceptions is the Terry stop. That's Terry versus Ohio, also known as the stop and frisk case as well. Okay, the Sixth Amendment is the right to a speedy trial and the right to an attorney, which, as you recall from the Miranda rights, that's one of the things that's implemented in that Miranda case. But that's borrowing from the Sixth Amendment. The famous Sixth Amendment case that individuals are entitled to counsel in criminal cases is Gideon versus Wainwright. Um, that's a very well established Sixth Amendment case where an individual represented themselves and were found guilty and they were incarcerated, and the Supreme Court from that point came out with the famous decision that said, no, you have a right to counsel. And then, like I said again, that was included with the Miranda rights. The Fourth Amendment, 14th Amendment, what it does is it ties all those things that I just said, the fourth, fifth, the 6th, and then the 8th, which I'll mention very briefly in a second, um, to the states. And so the states cannot uh, uh, violate your due process rights and must respect those rights under those respective amendments as well. Okay. The United States Supreme Court, I already kind of talked about that. And then I already talked about the 6th Amendment. Now in current times, there's something that came about which I was very excited about. It was near the end of my career, and that was dealing with DNA. I think DNA and that deals with search and seizure, is really a very exciting tool, and it's used to solve criminal investigations, identifications of individuals. There are individuals who are exonerated under wrongful conviction cases because of DNA. But one of the most interesting things that I've learned about DNA is that if it is not taken properly and maintained properly, it can be compromised and not necessarily be a good tool. So you have forensic people and scientists that you will work with as law enforcement, as attorneys, uh, that will be able to be the scientists, so to speak, and they will obtain that information. Um, Dealing with the all parts of the body. I mean, it's very interesting. We had a famous case, excuse me, a massacre that happened called the Brown's Chicken Massacre some years ago here in Illinois, where it was just unsolved for years and years and years, and then people started that were new about it started talking, and the information came out. But statements alone don't. So you have to have what we call corroboration, and the corroboration came about because there was a piece of chicken that was kept for years, and the DNA on the chicken nailed it to a specific individual, and that's how they were linked to the crime. So DNA is a great scientific tool, and if you want to check out the rights as far as DNA is concerned and how it's collected, check this article out as well. Okay. The three components of the criminal justice system. This is it. Now, if you remember, criminal justice corrections consist of only four: jails, prison, probation, or parole. Where the criminal justice system consists of three portions. And first one involves law enforcement or police. And we've already kind of discussed what law enforcement and police do. And that's why they're called law enforcement, to enforce the laws, to make arrests. And then it goes to the prosecutor and it ends up in the courts where the reports that are written by the police officers are used to determine whether or not there's sufficient evidence to take it to trial. And so all the way from the arrest, dealing with the warnings that we just talked about, then there's a determination about whether there's probable cause. Remember that you cannot arrest or search except upon, if a warrant is issued, except upon probable cause. And that's established by the person, law enforcement officer, going before a magistrate or judge with an affidavit describing the individual or the place that's going to be searched in particular. And then the search warrant is issued, unless, once again, it falls into one of the exceptions. The grand jury, which is one of the entities that can determine if there's probable cause. The thing about the grand jury that we defense attorneys don't like is that we don't have privy to being present at grand juries. It's the prosecution, the witnesses, and the jury. And we still have the opportunity after the grand jury, if they find what we call a true bill, which means they have taken it to the trial level or where the person has been charged or is going to be charged, then you find yourself in a situation where the person, something may happen to that person. The other way is by what we call information. And by information, then something can end up happening when the person is charged then. Okay. Well, probable cause is a big portion of it. You have the prosecution who represents the people of the jurisdiction or the state. Then you have the defense attorney who represents the defendant. That's the summary of it. Then you have the jury. You have a right to a jury trial. And when a jury is selected, usually there's 12 people selected for trial, plus 2 other individuals might be what we call alternate jurors. And the cases are decided. And the jury, of course, after they're selected from voir dire, as we call, or jury selection, which we talk about in detail in some of our other classes, will then make a decision by deliberation and then return a verdict or be hung, one or the other. You should know that in criminal cases that it is required that the jury reach a unanimous verdict before a person can be found guilty or not guilty. The defendant, if they're found guilty or plead guilty, could be sentenced to probation, and then they would be assigned a probation officer. The probation officer supervises the individual who doesn't go to jail and tries to help them to go in a new direction in life, sort of a mentor type thing. And if the defendant is then sentenced and serves time, then depending on whether the crime was a misdemeanor, and you should know that a misdemeanor is when a person is sentenced for less than a year, or to prison for a felony when a person is sentenced for a year or more. And jails are run by the city and the county. Prisons are run by the state and the federal government, and that's for longer periods of time. And so, when you leave prison, you serve your time unless you are paroled or given early release, as it's now called in some jurisdictions. And the key thing is to get that person back out into society. So while in corrections, treatment is necessary for rehabilitation or of substance abuse and mental issues. We've already talked a lot about that. As I said, this final line is right down my alley. Corrections is viewed as a rehabilitative function to provide resources to defendant to correct behavior and prevent recidivism or repeating. And that's it. Notice the role here of all 3 of these come down to with the duty to find, punish, and then ultimately rehabilitate. We're not punitive anymore. Thank God. Shouldn't be. Not helping anybody. And that's it. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. All right. Jennifer says none as of right now. Maisie, any questions? Okay. So as you probably have gathered now, it's a refresher. And each week we'll be covering topics for refresher just to show you. Let me share again. I want to show you something just to show you what's coming. So each week we will deal with a different topic. Criminal behavior theories in week 2, professional communication skills, one of my favorite lectures, comparing policing, criminal procedure, we'll talk about that more, some of the things that we just talked about. And then we'll deal with correctional philosophies, which goes back to introduction to corrections. So that's why I said to you earlier that this is a survey course. So, all right, well, I'm gonna let you go. Um, anything you want to know? It's a trick question. Okay. All right. Any suggestions? I'm going to give you an opportunity to take a shot at it because I have one in mind right now. Any guesses? Dust off the whole book. Uh, I'll tell you. It's the whole thing that we pretty much have talked about tonight, the overall umbrella, and that's due process. That's pretty much what we've talked about, covering all the amendments to the Constitution and also how you do your work. You got to remember, protect due process rights. So due process is the phrase to get your points. So put that in and you'll get your points. All right, guys. Again, it was great seeing you again. Looking forward to seeing you each Tuesday night. And anything else? All right. Well, uh, all right. Well, you guys stay safe. Have an enjoyable week. And again, you know what to do if you need me. And if there's some holes that I left or some questions that you have, I think the assignment is pretty straightforward, and I've covered in the lecture some things that can help you with that. By the way, one thing I do want you to remember, when you cite a case, please cite the official case. Most of the cases are Supreme Court cases. So it'll say, for example, 485 US 61, and in parentheses, it'll say 1963. I just do a hypothetical, then it shows the name of X versus Y and that kind of thing. Very important. When you in your papers that you cite it that way, at least early in the paper, and then after that you can appropriately use APA ways to cite the cases. The same thing, use appropriate statutes, pretty much. Okay. All right, guys, I'm gonna say good night to you again. Stay safe and have a good one.